Ladies and gentlemen, the moment has finally arrived. Thank God Almighty. What a beautiful day it is. Nancy Pelosi is going to go and send, let's just read you the Washington Post article, Impeachment Live Updates. Pelosi poised to name House managers ahead of transmission of impeachment articles against Trump to Senate. So, it's only taken her, over a month? Close to 2 months. Actually, close to 2 months. That's how important it was. That's how important it was to Democrats. This is dire national security. It was so pressing. My goodness, the fate of the republic. Let's just wait 2 months and get zero concessions because even Susan Collins doesn't want witnesses initially. And oh, by the way, because of new evidence, they call everything evidence. They should just look up at the sky and then see, patterns and clouds, and then say, oh, that's evidence that Trump withheld military assistance because he was afraid of Biden, which is another absurd fantasy of Democrats, along with the most absurd that Clinton has been exonerated because she was never even investigated. Ask James Comey and Peter Strzok and John Huber. But that Trump worked with Russia to hack the DNC to inform the country that Bernie Sanders was cheated, thus giving Clinton the popular vote but losing swing states and forcing Debbie Wasserman Schultz to resign in disgrace. Yes, that really happened. No, it didn't. Pelosi calls for witnesses at Trump trial after new evidence. House Democrats plan to vote on sending the articles of impeachment from the House Senate today. Okay, so Speaker Nancy Pelosi spoke out about newly released documents linking President Trump directly to his attorney Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani's political digging in Ukraine. We already knew that Trump sent Giuliani there to find information about the corruption pertaining to Biden. We already knew this. So they found information from a guy named Lev Parnas written on a Ritz-Carlton hotel note, written on Ritz-Carlton hotel notepaper. We already knew this. So it's kind of hilarious that they're making a big stink out of this. We already knew this. There's no direct evidence. There's no direct evidence at all. There is zero direct evidence that Trump did anything, any of the allegations they accuse him of doing. So we have right here, just go to the description section of every single one of my segments. 538, December 2nd, 2019. Quote, Democrats' case against Trump, on the other hand, doesn't have that one key piece of evidence linking Trump, evidence directly linking Trump to a quid pro quo. Do Democrats have enough evidence for impeachment? That's a great article. And the Associated Press, quote, yet the witness accounts, the impeachment witness accounts, left one prominent hole that offered a lifeline for Trump and his GOP allies. None of the witnesses could personally attest that Trump directly conditioned the release of the $400 million in military aid on a Ukrainian announcement of investigations into former Vice President Joe Biden and the Democratic National Committee. There was no quid pro quo. There was enough to investigate. This is what Democrats don't understand. There's enough to investigate. There's enough to investigate with or without the military assistance. Democrats want to paint the picture that Ukraine would never investigate the activities of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden were it not for the military assistance. That's not true. That's not true. If you have government officials that are forcing another country's prosecutor out, how does Zelensky feel about this? Is this normal diplomatic behavior? How many times does France force out the prosecutor in the UK, or in vice versa? How many times do we force out prosecutors in other countries? Generally, how many times has that happened? Even the United States of America. It's not often that we tell other countries to just go ahead and fire their chief prosecutors. So, but getting back to the 538 article, which ties directly into this new evidence that Rudy Giuliani's associate, who was indicted on campaign finance charges by the Southern District of New York, who will never touch with a million-foot pole, the Clinton Foundation, just like John Huber wouldn't. Or Clinton's campaign. Clinton's campaign purchased the Steele dossier. Do you think they notified the FEC? That's a campaign finance violation. I wrote about that in the Daily Caller. So is Correct the Record. So is the funneling of $80 million from the DNC. Sorry. Political parties can't funnel the money meant for down-ticket Democrats into one person's campaign, which happened. Politico wrote about that. But anyway, and I cited that in my Daily Caller article. But anyway, they say, oh my God, the document's part of the evidence turned over to the House impeachment investigators by lawyers for Lev Parnas, a Giuliani associate who was awaiting trial on campaign finance charges, include a letter from Giuliani requesting a private meeting with Vladimir Zelensky. Then the president elect of Ukraine, with Trump's knowledge and consent. So what? So Trump wanted his White House counsel, his personal attorney, to meet with the head of a country. How is that a bad thing? How is that illegal? You think Giuliani doesn't know? Who would you trust with the law more? The average journalist who's devoted his or her life and souls to taking down Trump and can never even get close to even undermining Trump? Or Giuliani, who's been indicting people for 40 years and knows the law better than anyone? There was nothing wrong with meeting Zelensky. And there's nothing wrong with going to the Ukraine. And it wasn't to get dirt on Biden. Biden actually is on tape, on video, bragging about what he did. I said, you're not going to get this money. You're not going to get this money unless you fire a prosecutor. Well, they fired the prosecutor. And initially they said, hey, wait a second, you don't have the authority to do this. So why didn't they think that he had the authority? But here, because he didn't have the authority, because it was on a whim, and he's never presented, nor has President Obama or anyone else in the Obama administration presented any evidence or stated, President Obama never stated he was acting on orders from the White House. So we're supposed to believe that Biden simply fired the prosecutor because of U.S. foreign policy without any evidence that it was U.S. foreign policy. I don't care if people agreed, journalists agreed, even Senate Republicans agreed, EU diplomats agreed. It doesn't matter. U.S. foreign policy is not based on a survey of EU officials and Senate Republicans, an informal survey. Where's the document that says that Joe Biden was allowed to, or was told to, by the president or by anyone at the State Department to fire that prosecutor that day? It doesn't exist, okay? Which is why, and if it does exist, we need to see it. But, of course, it was, if Biden committed something, misconduct, wrongdoing, his conflicts of interest got in the way, he should be investigated. He should be investigated. Okay? That's an important thing to remember. But here, you know what? We can just go ahead and there's a great line from this 538 article. By the way, liberal publication, but here, there is at present no single piece of evidence that conclusively links Trump to the Ukraine scandal, like the tape transcript of President Nixon ordering the Watergate cover-up. There you go. There you go. That particular piece of evidence was such a decisive smoking gun that its release forced Nixon's resignation within a matter of days. Okay, Democrats' case against Trump, on the other hand, doesn't have that one key piece of evidence directly linking Trump to a quid pro quo. The notion of investigating Biden shouldn't rest upon whether Trump was afraid of Biden. It should be founded upon whether he deserved to be investigated. And his son got $3.4 million, by one estimate, $50 to $60,000 a month, from an energy company that is now being investigated for corruption. Now, you better believe that if they want witnesses, so they're going to push for witnesses, which is another failed strategy. Then Republicans are going to push for witnesses. Then Biden is going to get subpoenaed, and Biden isn't going to go. And Hunter Biden isn't going to go. And Adam Schiff isn't going to go. And the intelligence operative isn't going to go. And the American people are going to say, wait a second, you're accusing President Trump. You're demanding that he and others, or that others around him testify, when, see, the difference being, nobody really knows what Trump did wrong. Like, really, nobody really knows. Okay? The average American, they don't speak like Democratic Party speak. They don't. The average American doesn't say, "Oh, honey, you lost the remote control. You deliberately did that to limit my time spending on my favorite show." See, Democrats say, "You're investigating Biden. That's a deliberate attempt to interfere in the election because it's dirt." Well, no, it's actually serious questions about his conduct. Dirt would be the Steele dossier. That would be the Steele dossier, yeah. Dirt would be made up nonsense, probably a fantasy of Bill Clinton, that they utilize to investigate Trump. So the same agents that said, "We will stop Trump" in their text messages also didn't even investigate Clinton. And we have William Barr and John Durham working. And we already know that they did more than Hubert because they actually interviewed people. They went to Italy, they went to London, they interviewed people. But that's a whole other story. The fundamental concept here is whether or not Joe Biden or his son should be investigated, and whether or not the DNC should be investigated for finding dirt on Manafort through Ukrainian officials. Even Dr. Fiona Hill stated, yeah, Ukraine picked the wrong horse. They sided with Democrats. Then you have one Ukrainian official who wrote a negative article on Trump, and then they said, well, that was because Trump was siding with Russia. So what? So what? Usually these officials are neutral. But again, there is no neutral. It's the only fair and neutral and impartial if you are against Trump. But Pelosi's finally going to send the articles today, and it ain't going to work out for them. As usual, it won't work out. As usual, it's going to be yet another. The media is going to have to spin this to the point of absurdity. Spin this to the point of absurdity, because what's going to take place, like I said, is each side is going to want its own witnesses. The only problem is that the Republicans or Trump has witnesses that are central to all of this. The whole reason this is happening is not because Trump committed a crime, because there is no crime. Because the Washington Post and the articles below in the description section of every one of my segments even admitted there is no crime. There's no crime, and there's no direct evidence linking Trump to what he is said to have done. But Americans can understand, the average American, the average person on the planet can understand, okay, a very powerful, influential vice president whose son, who happens to be in charge of U.S. foreign policy towards Ukraine, but only to a certain extent, because when he tells Ukrainian officials to fire a prosecutor, they push back. So he's not omnipotent, and we need to find out why they pushed back and why he said call the president. But the average American understands that, hey, you have this man whose father is vice president. This man's on the board of directors for a Ukrainian energy company that's already being investigated for corruption. Gets what? Total of $3.4 million, about $50,000 a month or so, sometimes more. He doesn't speak Russian, doesn't speak Ukrainian, okay? Doesn't speak Russian or Ukrainian. And then there are reports in the New York Post of smoking narcotics in gentlemen's clubs. Okay, nothing wrong with gentlemen's clubs, but smoking narcotics in the gentlemen's club while you have a paternity case going on, or I guess before, maybe long before. Then there's the issue of, how shall we say, I don't even want to bring it up. How do I bring it up in the most benign manner? A report in the New York Post. So let's just see if I can. New York Post. Let's see. How do I explain in the most family-friendly way? It's always difficult with Hunter. Who that is, my Hunter Biden. Okay, so New York Post, Hunter Biden. Okay. So, oh yeah, here you go. Here you go. Allegedly, dancers. Well, he spent thousands in Manhattan, fined thousands of dollars at a gentleman's club. On one occasion, he and his companion were in a private room, bottles of I guess, alcohol. And during one, they warned him that he couldn't consume narcotics. That same night, this is according to the New York Post, page 6. Let's see. My God. It was a device utilized by adults in an intimate setting that allegedly, according to this New York Post article, good old Hunter partook in, or wanted to partake in. Anyway, think you know what I'm referring to. Maybe you don't, but maybe you do. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. This is the pure as the driven snow person that Democrats are like, how dare you? How dare you? How dare you accuse? How dare you accuse Biden of any wrongdoing? Oh my God, he's just such a wonderful. Both of the Bidens, all of this, ladies and gentlemen, and Trump needs to double down. He needs to double down on all of this. This has nothing to do with nepotism. This has to do with money and conflicts of interest. Notice there's always the money flows and conflicts of interest and bizarre. Like Clinton used not only private servers. James Comey didn't investigate. He didn't find out how Clinton transferred the top secret intelligence from the Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communication System onto her private servers. Okay, he didn't find that out. Okay, but all of this. Then she used Platte River and Dato. She uses firms outside the United States government. Even a person goes on Reddit and tries to find information on how to delete emails for Clinton. The whole thing's, absurd. Democrats, what they do is they pretend that they're the adults in the room, and they get media to just, regurgitate their talking points. And now it's to the point where the average American doesn't care. They're looking at this impeachment in swing states and among independent voters. Impeachment is not popular at all. That's exactly who you have to win. They'll lose with Clinton again. Clinton will be the nominee. But who knows when she's going to run or swoop in or whatever. Give me your thoughts below. Check out H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. I'll have a bunch of segments today to make up for the fact that there weren't that many yesterday. Give me your thoughts. Thank you. On H.A. Goodman's other channel.